Hey, sleepy minds. I'm the sleepwalking historian, where history drifts like dreams. Tonight's tale might just lull you to sleep. But first, don't forget to follow for more bedtime journeys through the past. Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through the sandstone corridors of ancient Egypt, where warm oil lamps flicker on plastered walls and the scent of incense curls into the air like nervous fingers. You're not a pharaoh, not a priest, not even a farmer hauling papyrus bundles. No, tonight, you're something far more delicate, an Egyptian bride-to-be. Your eyes are lined with thick kohl, your wrists wrapped in linen and blue faience beads, and your feet, trembling slightly, are softened with perfumed oil that you're young. Very young. And though the air is still, your breath comes fast. The clay courtyard bustles behind you with wedding guests singing and eating roasted duck, but you're not out there dancing under the moon. You're here, in this quiet room, preparing, waiting, and wondering what exactly is going to happen when that door closes. Because in this time and place, no one really tells you. Not plainly. They whisper, they hint, they leave you alone with jars of oil, lotus petals, and something dark and terrifying coiled inside your stomach. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a small town, a big city, or curled up under mosquito, knitting halfway across the world, drop your location and local time in the comments. We're all falling asleep together tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink slowly. The scent of frankincense mixes with your fear. Everyone says this is the happiest day of your life. But your hands won't stop shaking. Marriage in ancient Egypt wasn't a candlelit romance novel. Most marriages weren't about love or even personal choice. They were agreements, contracts. A little girl might be promised to a family ally before her first tooth fell out. Maybe your father owed a favor, or a goat, and now you're the peace offering. For a well-off family, there would be gifts exchanged, sometimes jewelry or grain, but nothing so fantastical as modern brides expect. No dresses puffed with lace, no cake, no vows in a field of lavender. You'd simply be handed over. And the handing over? That's where your fear starts to bloom. The home you're going to isn't always a complete mystery. Sometimes you'd have met the man once or twice, but you're still leaving everything behind. Your mother, your sisters, even your tiny clay doll with the red paint flaking off. All replaced with a stranger's bed and a new family who will judge you like livestock at market. There's a word you keep hearing whispered when your aunts think you're not listening. Night. They say it softly, as if the word itself might break you. Your cousin, barely older than you, once cried through her veil during her wedding. Her husband was respected, which was another way of saying no one would interfere, even if things went badly in the house next door. A woman returned to her family after her wedding night with nothing but silence in her eyes. The cloth hadn't stained red. People talked. They still talk. This night isn't just about celebration. It's a test, not just of your body, but of your worth, your purity, and your usefulness. Historians still argue whether the famed virginity test was a widespread custom or just a dramatic tale passed down to terrify young women into compliance. But one thing is certain, women believed in it. Believed that if you didn't bleed, you were ruined, or a liar, or worse. And so, brides prepared in silence that you're told to bathe until your skin puckers, to shave every stray hair, to rub yourself in jasmine oil, to chew herbs for fresh breath even though your stomach turns. One girl said her aunt gave her dried crocodile dung, ground into powder, to insert before the wedding night. For fertility, she said, or maybe just to create enough discomfort to distract from what's coming. And there are the gods. They always get involved. Hathor is supposed to bless lovers and give beauty, but even her priests carry knives. Isis protects marriage and children, yes, but she's also the goddess of mourning. How convenient. You sit on a low stool now, staring at the wooden door, the carved falcon eyes watching you from the walls. Every noise outside, laughter, footsteps, the clink of pottery, makes your spine flinch. This is the night that changes everything. And no one's really prepared you for it. One fringe theory among scholars even suggests that in certain dynasties, a priestess or senior female relative might inspect you beforehand, claiming to protect you, but truly protecting your husband's reputation. Because that was the real value here. You were a vessel, a symbol, a walking bet between families. What if he doesn't like you? What if you cry? What if you don't? What if you can't stop shaking when he touches you? Remember that cousin with the silent eyes. Her husband took another wife 2 months later. So the first one was defective. And so she returned home like a basket of bruised fruit. Outside your door now, footsteps approach. Someone chuckles. A man's voice. Then a knock. You swallow hard, because no one told you what love is. They only told you what happens if you fail. The door doesn't creak, it groans. Thick wooden planks pulled aside with the same solemnity someone might use to open a tomb. You don't flinch exactly. You freeze, the way prey does when it senses a predator near, but isn't quite sure which direction the danger is coming from that he enters. Your husband. Maybe you've seen him before. Maybe not. He's older, definitely. Perhaps by a few years. Perhaps by a few decades. In his hand is a cup of honeyed beer, and on his face, a smile you don't yet understand. It's meant to be comforting, you think. But to you, it feels like the calm before a sandstorm. He says your name softly. You reply with a whisper, trained and polite. And that's it. No sweet conversation. No discussion of your day. Just quiet. Your eyes drop to the floor tiles, tracing faded lotus motifs while he sets the cup down. See, in ancient Egypt, marriage wasn't built on intimacy. Love was not the expected outcome. In fact, it was almost incidental. What mattered was stability, lineage, and the continuation of order. Ma'at, the sacred principle of harmony, ruled everything. And harmony meant roles. You, the wife, were meant to be fertile, obedient, and pleasant. The romantic poets of Thebes may have scribbled verses about longing and lust, but those were more fantasy than expectation. You didn't have to love him. You had to bear his children. Ideally, sons that he sits beside you. You smell incense on his skin and faint traces of the temple where the marriage was blessed earlier. One hand reaches to touch yours. It's not rough. Not yet. But your heart pounds as if you're running through the valley of the kings with Anubis on your heels. Here's the twist. Egyptian women actually had more legal autonomy than many of their ancient counterparts. You could own property, initiate divorce, even inherit. On Papyrus, you were a person. In bed, though, that autonomy was paper thin. That a marriage contract might spell out financial expectations, but not consent. That wasn't a concept yet. The wedding night was assumed. You belonged to him now. And if he didn't like you, well, that could get complicated. Some records hint at men returning brides to their families if they were unsatisfactory, a vague term that could mean anything from failing to please in bed to merely speaking out of turn. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or rare, but stories passed down from village to village suggest it was enough of a threat to terrify young women into compliance. Back in your quiet room, he asks if you're ready. You nod, even though your entire body screams no. You've been trained to say yes, to smile, to submit. That's what's expected. And expectations are everything. You shift slightly, linen rustling against the woven reed mat. It's not the pain you fear, or not just that. It's the uncertainty. Will he be gentle? Will he be cruel? Will he talk afterward or just roll over and sleep? The silence stretches that he offers you a sip of beer. You take it, even though your stomach roils. It's meant to calm your nerves, maybe make things easier. Maybe for both of you. Suddenly, the thought hits you. He's nervous too, not out of fear, but out of pressure. He must perform, prove, mark the night with some evidence of consummation. Otherwise, the marriage is incomplete. This was a time before cameras, before signatures on dotted lines meant much emotionally. So how did people prove a marriage was real? Blood. Virginity wasn't just a biological state. It was a social transaction. The family expected proof. Some households used white cloths, spread beneath the bride, checked after. If there was no stain, shame could follow. But here's the thing most men didn't say aloud. Not all women bleed. Not every time. Not even most times, according to modern medicine. But science hadn't arrived in ancient Egypt with a stethoscope and a pamphlet. If there was no blood, there were only two explanations. Either you weren't pure, or you weren't human. Some women, terrified of this possibility, turned to fringe remedies. There's a whispered tale of a girl who pricked her finger and stained the cloth herself. Another smeared pomegranate juice and prayed no one looked too closely. One clever girl, so the old women say, used beetle dye. Red, convincing, and conveniently sacred to the gods. Your hand trembles as you place it in he kisses your forehead, awkwardly, then pauses. He's not a villain, you think. He's just playing a part like you are. The wedding night is less about passion than performance, that he begins to untie the linen sash at your waist, and your mind floats elsewhere. Back to the morning, when your mother combed your hair and tucked an amulet of Hathor near your breast. For protection, she whispered, though from what, she never said. The amulet grows warm against your skin. Or maybe that's just your fear. Either way, you close your eyes because in this moment, the reality is not yours to shape. It's already been scripted, written in ink, pressed into clay, repeated across generations of girls just like you. And so the night begins. Outside, the wedding drums still thrum faintly. But in here, all is still, and the silence is heavier than stone. Morning doesn't come with sunlight. It comes with whispers. Someone's outside the door, more than one voice. You hear the rustle of linen, the clink of clay cups. A woman coughs politely. It's your mother-in-law, or maybe your aunt. You're not sure anymore whose family and who just hovers around you like silent judges that he's gone. Slipped out before dawn, perhaps to boast to the others, or maybe just to escape the tension he knew would follow. You're still lying there, wrapped in a blanket that smells of lotus and oil, staring at the ceiling. Then comes the question, soft, almost embarrassed. Was a cloth stained? You close your eyes. In ancient Egypt, Girlhood ended not at a particular age, but at a moment. The wedding night marked that line with blood, or was supposed to. And if it didn't, well, people had their theories. Historians still argue whether the pressure to produce a blood-stained sheet was widespread in practice or simply a myth kept alive by cautionary tales. But the stories were enough to make it real in the minds of the girls who lived them. You sit up slowly. Your limbs ache, not from pain, but from the stiffness of sleeping like a statue, too afraid to move. You glance down at the folded linen set aside for this moment. It's cleaned out or mostly got a small spot, faint. Maybe enough, maybe not. You can't tell anymore. You don't know what they expect. How much blood is the right amount? Is there a standard? A chart somewhere in some pre-scroll labeled acceptable levels of female suffering? A knock. Then the door creaks open just wide enough for a hand to slide through and take the cloth. You say nothing. They say nothing. The door closes. You feel like a prisoner awaiting verdict. Because here's what no one said aloud. This morning could change everything that a clean cloth might mean accusations of impurity, infidelity, or even deception. And when those rumors start, they rarely stop. Some brides are quietly returned to their families. Others are beaten, or worse, used as scapegoats for any future infertility in the marriage. And yes, you heard the stories. Everyone has point one bride, the daughter of a merchant in Memphis, was accused of lying about her virginity and publicly humiliated at the temple gates. Another, married to a minor official, mysteriously fell ill days later and was never seen again. The official, notably, remarried within the month. Folk tales? Maybe. But tell that to the girls who whisper them behind their hands, braiding one another's hair with trembling fingers. You stand slowly. Someone's left a basin of water near the door. The floor is cold beneath your feet as you cross to it, splash your face, and glance at your reflection in the polished copper mirror. You barely recognize yourself. Your eyes are ringed with smudged coal, your hair a mess of loosened pins and dried perfume. You look older. You feel older. The truth is, you're still a child in many ways. But in this society, that part of you has been stripped away like old linen. There's no going back that you're a wife now. And everyone expects you to act like it. One of the oddest things about ancient Egyptian culture is how it managed to combine harsh social expectations with surprisingly progressive laws. On paper, at least, you could file for divorce, technically. You could own land, keep your own wealth, and pass on property to your daughters. You weren't, strictly speaking, someone's possession. But in practice, that legal freedom lived in the hands of scribes and gods, not girls. Your family's reputation depended on your behavior. Their honor was tied to your body. If you failed this unspoken test, you didn't just disgrace yourself. You disgraced them all. As girls learned early how to navigate this web of silent performance. There were tricks passed down in whispers, how to fake a blush, how to time your breath so you wouldn't cry in front of him. Some swore by potions made from date wine and crushed lotus petals, said to loosen the body and dull the nerves. Others just prayed harder. Fringe remedies abounded. Some midwives sold powdered seeds or honey-based salves. One popular but disturbing practice involved inserting softened acacia gum, both for fertility and tightness. The idea was to impress, to perform, to create the illusion of inexperience without risking pain or shame. Because the wedding night wasn't just a moment. It was a performance, and you had one chance to get it right. You wrap yourself in fresh linen and sit on the edge of the bed. The sun is up now, lighting the room in gold. Outside, life has resumed. Cattle lowing, servants sweeping, water sellers calling through the alleyways. But inside, everything has changed. You hear footsteps again. This time it's him, your husband. He returns not with fireworks or affection, but with a nod and a wordless offering of breakfast, dates, cheese, flatbread. You take it because you're expected to. You eat because you must. Neither of you mentions the cloth. Neither of you mentions the night that he talks about a delivery of linen he's expecting, a trip he must take soon, a cousin's wedding in Thebes next week. You nod, smile when it seems appropriate, but your mind is still stuck on the moment the door opened and the cloth was taken. Did it pass? Will they talk? Will your mother's eyes meet yours with pride or disappointment next time you see her? You don't know yet, but the air feels heavier today, like the sandstorm hasn't passed. It's just waiting. And in your bones, you already understand. You survived the night, but this was only the beginning. You wake again, not from sleep, but from the weight of expectation pressing down on your chest like one of those stone offering slabs at the temple. The first few days after the wedding night pass in a strange, suspended state. You're no longer a maiden, but not quite settled into your new role either. You hover in some invisible middle space, like a figurine someone forgot to paint. The women of the household eye you with sharp kindness. They offer you herbs for digestion, show you how to fold the linen more tightly, how to cook his favorite lentil stew. But under every helpful gesture lies the unspoken question: are you doing your part? Because now the real test begins. Pregnancy in ancient Egypt, a bride's value increased sharply once she proved herself fertile. That was the currency that mattered. Children, especially sons, meant security, status, and divine favor. And if no child came quickly, whispers returned like locusts that you've heard the old stories. How brides were sometimes scorned, dismissed, or worse, blamed for every misfortune in the household. A poor harvest? Must be the barren wife. A dying cow? Maybe she cursed it with her failure. Historians still debate how common these blame games truly were, but the pattern appears in enough surviving scrolls, letters, and even tomb art to raise eyebrows. Even magical texts hint at these quiet fears. Spells for conception, fertility charms, and protective amulets abound. Hathor and Bess are invoked not just with hope, but with desperation. You feel it already, coiling beneath your ribs. That slow-burning question. What if you don't conceive? What happens then? Your mother-in-law brings you a potion one morning. For strength, she says gently. It smells like onions and mint and something vaguely metallic. You drink it because refusing would mean questions, and you begin to understand that in this world, your body is no longer just yours. It's a shrine, or a factory, or both. That if you have a child, preferably a boy, you'll be praised, rewarded, maybe even left alone. If not, you may become a cautionary tale whispered to younger girls. Don't end up like her. In some households, barren wives were replaced, sometimes officially, through divorce or remarriage, but more often informally, by concubines or secondary wives brought in under the pretense of helping. You remember one girl from your district whose husband married her cousin after a year of no children. She stayed in the house, invisible, like old furniture no one was brave enough to throw out. But not all marriages were so cruel. In some rare cases, love, or at least respect, grew slowly like papyrus for muddy water. You cling to that idea. Maybe he'll be kind. Maybe you'll laugh one day about how scared you were. But for now, it's just more herbs, more prayers, more pressure. You find yourself staring at the moon one night, wondering if it was always this bright. The cool breeze presses through the linen screen and carries with it the scent of roasted barley and ash. Your neighbor is giving birth tonight. You can hear the moans through the walls. Her second child. The midwife chants softly, rhythmically, like an ancient song meant to keep demons away. You envy her pain. Least it means she made it. At least she passed. The next morning, you leave a small offering at the household shrine: dates, dried fish, a little beer. You whisper to Isis under your breath. Just one child, one sign, something to make them stop watching you so closely. There's a fringe story about a woman who faked a pregnancy by stuffing cloth beneath her robes and claiming the gods had made her swell overnight. It worked for a while, until the truth emerged, and she was driven into the desert with nothing but a jug of water and a donkey. You try not to think about her. Instead, you clean the floors again, fold the linens, smile when spoken to, lay beside your husband and pretend not to notice how he counts the days with his fingers, tracking something silently, perhaps even unconsciously. It's not hatred that scares you. It's disinterest. Because even that can be dangerous in a world where women must constantly prove their worth. You remember your cousin's wedding. She danced through the reception, cheeks flushed with excitement. A month later, she was thin, pale, and quiet. She said the gods were testing her. You never saw her again after that winter, and no one talks about her now. Not directly, but her name still lingers on the wind when the doors creak in the night. And so, you wait. Each missed month is a question. Each spot of blood a disappointment. You grow skilled at hiding your reactions. Smile when you're supposed to. Stay silent when you must. Your husband grows distant, but not cruel. He's not a monster. He simply grows tired of uncertainty. And in Egypt, where even the Nile's rhythm was sacred, uncertainty was dangerous. One evening, your mother-in-law brings another drink. This one thicker, bitter. She says it was blessed by a priestess. You drink it. You don't ask questions anymore, because fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it seeps like water under a locked door, and now you're soaking in it. The days lengthen. The sun blazes hotter, and the temple bells feel louder somehow. You count time in awkward silences and forced smiles, in days without blood and days with it. But nothing grows. Not inside you. Not in the quiet garden your husband once said he'd plant. The whispers are back. Louder now. You catch them at the market when you pass. Two older women mumbling, just loud enough for you to hear. Something about bad luck, about the one without a child. You clench your jaw, but you don't stop walking. Because what can you say? That you've been trying? That your stomach curls in knots each morning. Not from illness, but from hope crashing against reality. In ancient Egypt, a man's household was his kingdom, and his wife, his gatekeeper to legacy. Your husband may not say it out loud, but you see it in his posture, the way he avoids your eyes during meals, the way he speaks more to the servants than to you. He's waiting, just like everyone else. But this waiting, this passive pressure, feels like drowning slowly in warm milk. You're still breathing, but not for long. Some girls, those more bold or more desperate, turn to remedies whispered behind curtains. A midwife might mix herbs with honey and wine, promising fertility. One particularly strange concoction involved cow's milk left under the moon. mixed with snakeskin ash. Supposedly, it woke the womb. You tried the pomegranate method. You soaked the seeds, ground them with fig sap, and prayed hard enough to split the stars. Nothing. Your mother once told you about a friend of hers who claimed a spirit was blocking her womb, jealous of her beauty. A priest came and waved incense, beat a drum, and burned 3 mouse tails as an offering. The woman conceived the following season. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when you're desperate, you stop caring about logic. Historians still debate the effectiveness or even the sincerity of many ancient fertility rituals. Some believe they were simply social theater, ways for a woman to show her community that she was trying. Even if nothing came of it, she could say, "I burned the mouse tails. I drank the lion's breath tea. I cared," and caring in this world is a kind of armor. Your husband begins to sleep in a different room now. He claims it's because of the heat. You don't argue, but at night, you feel the absence like a shadow pressed against your spine. The mat beside you cold, the silence deeper point. One morning, his sister visits. She's warm at first, brings you beads, a little saffron. She smiles too much. Then she says it plainly. There are options. She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. You know exactly what she means. Another wife, or a concubine, not instead of you, just alongside, just to help, as if you're an injured ox and he needs another to plow beside you. You nod because screaming would do nothing. You drink the tea she brought anyway, because refusing would be noticed, and that's what terrifies you now. Not the idea of losing your marriage, but the slow fade into invisibility that you've seen it happen. The woman down the road who once hosted feasts and poured wine now spends her days talking to a cat. Her husband remarried. The younger wife bore 2 sons, and the first wife became a ghost in her own courtyard. And still, she smiles at everyone, because even ghosts must be polite. You consider running away. But where would you go? Your family wouldn't take you back, not without shame sticking to you like clay in your fingernails. Divorce was legal, yes, but what good is legality when your entire world lives inside your reputation? You write a letter you never sent. To your mother. You write, "I don't know how to be good in this world that I bleed. I wait, I pray, and still, they say it's not enough." Then you burn I in the courtyard that night. You watch the stars flicker above the palm trees. Somewhere, another girl is preparing for her wedding night. Somewhere, a wife is holding her belly, hoping this one stays. Somewhere, a concubine is being welcomed with spices and silk. And somewhere deeper inside you, something begins to twist, not with grief, but with grit. Because if no one will protect you, you may have to do it yourself. You visit the temple alone the next day. The priest raises an eyebrow, but says nothing. You kneel before Hathor, the goddess of fertility and love, and offer a single bead, blue, chipped at the edge. You whisper, "If I am to stay, give me strength that if I am to go, show me the door." And then you wait. The temple doesn't answer. Not right away, at least. The gods of ancient Egypt are slow to speak. Or maybe they speak in riddles. Or perhaps they speak only to the scribes and the priests, not to trembling young wives clutching chipped beads with sweaty palms. You return home from the temple with dust on your sandals and no clearer sense of what's to come. But something has shifted, not in the world, but in you. You're no longer waiting passively. You begin observing more carefully. Who speaks to whom? Which servant lingers outside your door when your husband returns, and what he smells like. One night, it's wine and perfume, not yours. You say nothing. You chew your bread and nod politely when he mumbles about a long meeting. You're playing a game now, though no one gave you the rules. A game of survival, of perception. And in ancient Egypt, perception could mean everything. The bedroom, once a place of dread, is now a chessboard. And you're finally learning how to move the pieces. Still, the memory of that first night clings like the smoke from burner. You remember how stiff your limbs were, how your hands clenched in your lap like trapped birds. And you remember something else, the pressure of performance, the silent terror of being judged on something so deeply private. That terror hasn't vanished. It's just changed shape. Now, it's not blood on a sheet that haunts you. It's the question of whether your usefulness is slipping away one silent dinner at a time. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian women lived in fear of their husbands or simply accepted their roles as a divine order. But personal letters and household records hint at the truth. There was fear, maybe not always of violence, but of being discarded, replaced, forgotten. You try again. You drink more potions. You carry charms, sleep with an amulet of Taret beneath your pillow, the hippo-shaped goddess who protects pregnant women. You place fig leaves under your tongue at night, as your neighbor advised. To open the womb, she said with eyes that didn't blink. And still, the months passed, he starts talking less. The courtyard becomes a stage where women watch each other for signs of swelling bellies, of nesting instincts. You notice a young maid touch her stomach gently and then catch your husband looking. Not for long, but long enough. You don't say anything. Not yet. But the weight shifts again. One day, a letter arrives, sealed with wax and bearing the mark of a distant cousin. You read it once, then again, then a third time, just to feel something different. He's hosting a festival, one celebrating Hathor, ironically. You're invited, with your husband, of course, but he tells you to go alone. You could use the air, he says without looking up from his scrolls. That night, you lie in bed with the full moon spilling light across your skin. You wonder if he's testing you, or if he's simply done caring. And you wonder something else. If the power he holds over your body is only real so long as you believe it is that, in the weeks that follow, you begin asking quiet questions. Not loud enough to stir suspicion, just enough to gather threads. You learn that the midwife who once helped you mix pomegranate seeds also sells things to women in more desperate situations. You hear of herbs that can mimic pregnancy and others that end it. You ask nothing directly, but she understands. One day, you find a beetle charm in your bed. Not yours, not your husband's. You pick it up with careful fingers. The ISM message, a warning, or just something someone dropped. Either way, the house is no longer yours, not in spirit. Maybe it never was. You begin sleeping less, eating less, listening more. You eavesdrop from corners, pretend to nap while the servants chat. You learn about another woman, someone he visits on Thursdays. You know her name now, and her laugh. She's younger, of course. And one of the servants says she might already be expecting. That's the moment the heat inside you solidifies into something sharp. Not jealousy, not even heartbreak, just cold recognition. You are now replaceable. And that's when you begin preparing. You move more quietly, begin setting aside things. A necklace here, a bit of silver tucked beneath your old tunic, a small vial of oil. You draw a tiny map on the back of a discarded scroll. You start planning, not for revenge, but for escape. Historians rarely find these stories. Women who disappear don't leave much behind. They slip through the cracks, unrecorded except for one less bowl at the table, one name scratched out of a marriage contract. But you know they existed. You feel them like echoes in your bones. And now, you're one of them. One morning, the servant who usually brings your breakfast hesitates. She looks at you longer than usual. Then she whispers, "It's not your fault," and walks away. You sit there, fingers wrapped around a cup of warm beer, wondering if the house knows you're leaving before you do. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. But soon, because the bedroom may be a battlefield, but you're done playing the obedient soldier. Now, you move like smoke. The next few nights pass in a strange, suspended stillness. No new whispers, no strange glances. The silence becomes its own kind of noise, thick, humming, watchful. You feel it pressing on your skin when you lie awake at night, watching the ceiling flicker with torchlight from the courtyard. And yet it's not silence, is it? It's waiting. Your husband doesn't speak of the other woman. He doesn't need to. The absence of conversation has filled its place. You eat dinner together, but it feels like you're sitting opposite a statue carved too roughly from sandstone. Eyes blank, mouth unmoving. You ask about the linen shipment. He nods, says little. You used to fear his touch. Now you fear his disinterest. He doesn't reach for you anymore. Not even out of obligation, which should be a relief, right? But instead, it leaves you hollowed that in ancient Egypt, virginity was never about purity for the woman's sake. It was about legitimacy, proof of possession. But once you were possessed, your body became a tool. And if the tool failed to produce, it was set aside. Historians still argue whether this commodification of women was cultural or economic, or both. Some even suggest that elite women had more flexibility, more say in their homes. Maybe they did, but you aren't elite that you're decorative. Useful when you're useful, and right now, you aren't. The moment when it becomes official is subtle. It happens one afternoon when your husband returns with a new gold ring. You assume it's for you. You smile politely and reach out. But he says, "It's not yours," and walks past. That night, the servants prepare a second chamber. You hear the name again. Hers. The other woman. And that's when the panic sets in. Not wild and messy, but cold, precise. Like a falcon's shadow on the ground, that you've waited too long, that she's not just a visitor. She's the new you, and unlike you. She might already be carrying what everyone wants, a child. You retreat to your room and shut the door softly, as if noise might give you away. You sit in front of the polished copper mirror, stare at yourself, and try to find a version of you from months ago. The bride trembling beneath jasmine oil and coal-lined eyes. She's gone at inner place as someone quieter, sharper. You open the small bundle you've been hiding. A piece of turquoise, a few dried dates, a vial of priest-blessed oil, and one heavy ring. Yours from your mother, tucked beneath the hem of your wedding robe. You've watched. You've waited. Now, you move. The timing must be perfect. You plan to leave at night, just after the household quiets, but before the temple guards begin their rounds. You'll slip through the courtyard garden gate, take the winding alley past the baker's stall, and follow the canal path east that you've arranged for a woman in the market, an older scribe's widow, to offer you shelter. You've lied, of course. Said your husband beat you. Said you lost your child. Said you just needed one night. She believes you, or pretends to. Either way, she gives you a place to land. But before you leave, there's one thing you must do. You return to the bedroom one final time. Not to linger, just to look. The linens are neatly folded. The walls still bear faint smudges from your incense burners. Your amulet of Hathor is gone, taken, probably offered to the new wife like a hand-me-down. Let her have it. You no longer need divine protection. You're your own god now. You step into the courtyard. The air is thick with the scent of dates and smoke. The guards are distracted, joking among themselves by the outer gate. You slip past them like breath. The first few steps are shaky. You expect someone to yell, to reach for you, to drag you back inside and scold you for stepping outside your role, but no one does. And that, somehow, feels worse, because it means you were never as important as you were told. You pass the baker's stall. The smell of barley bread catches in your throat. You think of your mother, of the advice she gave you, always in riddles. Be like the Nile, she once said. Quiet but always moving. You finally understand what she meant. You follow the canal path. The moonlight dances on the water like spilled oil. Somewhere behind you, a new bride is being prepared. Somewhere ahead, a widow waits. You walk the space between them, and oh, one knows where you are. No one knows what you'll do next. And for the first time since your wedding night, that feels like power. The widow's home smells like ink and boiled lentils. She lives alone in a narrow house near the scribal quarter, where the walls are crammed with scrolls and scraps of papyrus stacked like loaves in a baker's stall. Her late husband was a temple scribe, respected, precise, and apparently the kind of man who made copies of copies just to feel something. She doesn't ask questions when you arrive, just opens the door, glances once at your face, and hands you a clay cup of warm beer. You'll need rest, she says. The world's heavier when you carry it without a man. You nod, though you aren't sure if it's agreement or just exhaustion. You sleep that night on a straw mat in her back room, beneath a faded curtain embroidered with falcons. You dream of running, of laughter, of your own hands pressed against your belly in joy. And then you wake to silence, and no husband, no gossiping maids, no mother-in-law hovering like an omen, just you, and the widow, and the city buzzing faintly beyond the shuttered window. You stay hidden for a few days, maybe a week. It's hard to tell time when you aren't being measured against someone else's expectations. In ancient Egypt, time wasn't kept in hours or minutes. It was marked by the rhythms of nature and the duties of the day. And when those duties disappear, time starts to feel like honey. Slow, sticky, dangerous in large amounts. The widow teaches you small things. How to patch papyrus. How to copy symbols without smudging. How to listen for footsteps and silence your breath in the same second. Historians rarely write about women like this. They focus on queens and priestesses, those with titles and tombs, not the ones who vanish between walls, behind veils, into anonymity. But this is where the real stories live. The widow tells you one over breakfast, about a woman who escaped a cruel husband by pretending to be a mourning servant, face covered in ash, body wrapped in black linen. She joined a caravan heading south and never looked back. Another woman she knew faked madness, pulled out her hair and screamed in the streets until the neighbors insisted she be taken to a healer in another province. She went quietly. She never came back. Fringe tales? Maybe. But here, every whisper contains a survival manual. You begin helping the widow more, mixing inks, feeding the neighbor's cat, copying small records for grain tallies. One day, she hands you a fresh piece of papyrus and says, "Write anything you want. No one will read it but you." You hesitate, then begin. I was not a good bride. I did not cry prettily or conceive quickly. I learned how to leave. And sometimes, leaving is the holiest act. You fold it up and tuck it under a jar of dried mint. Just in case someone finds you and tries to tell your story for you. One afternoon, a merchant's wife comes by. She stares at you too long, mouth slightly open, as if she recognizes your face from a temple courtyard or a wedding feast. You don't look away. You stare back until she lowers her eyes and pretends not to have seen you. That night, the widow sits beside you in the small courtyard and asks, "What do you want next?" It's a question no one's ever asked you. Not like that. Not without conditions. You don't know how to answer at first at D. Oh, you want to marry again? Risk that theater all over again? Or would you rather vanish fully? Become a healer in the Delta or a midwife in a town where no one knows your name? You remember something your husband once said, offhandedly, while counting grain. A woman without a child is like a jar without a lid. She holds nothing. You think about that now and smile, because you're starting to see how many uses a jar has, open or not. The widow offers to teach you the priestly alphabet next. Not the common symbols, but the complex ones, used in temple rituals and sacred texts. They won't let women write them, she says, but they can't stop you from learning. And so, you begin again. Each day, you grow quieter on the outside and louder within. You trace symbols by moonlight. You hum prayers to yourself. Your own versions, not the ones men wrote. You think of all the girls still waiting behind wedding doors, their fates sealed in oil and linen, and you wish you could reach them. Historians still argue how many women escaped their prescribed lives in ancient Egypt. The records are slim, but sometimes a name disappears from a ledger. A marriage ends with no reason given. A letter hints at a daughter gone south, blessed by the gods to follow her own course. Maybe those are just stories, but you're one of them now, a quiet, moving piece in a much larger puzzle, and you're not finished yet. The city stretches before you like an open scroll, inked with alleyways, creased by canals, and filled with voices that no longer say your name. You walk through it more freely now, veiled when necessary, invisible when required. The widow gives you errands as excuses to move, small commissions to deliver. An ink jar here, a copied list of donations there. Each journey becomes practice. Practice for vanishing that you've begun to think about leaving entirely. Not just the house, not just the marriage, but this entire life. The idea forms slowly like a drop of oil on linen. It spreads quietly. A thought at first, what if I went south? Then a whisper, what if I changed my name? Then a prayer, not to a god, but to yourself. What if I started over as someone who had never belonged to him? The Nile, always flowing, becomes a symbol you clutch like a charm. If the river can carve its own path through stone and soil, maybe so can you. In ancient Egypt, movement wasn't easy, especially not for a woman. Travel required permissions, resources, connections. But it wasn't impossible. There are tomb inscriptions about female traders, midwives who crossed provinces, women who followed traveling shrines as singers or healers. They slipped through cracks in the system, quietly, skillfully. Historians still debate how much mobility women truly had, whether these stories were rare exceptions or hints of a more flexible reality than we've assumed. But the truth is, the absence of records doesn't mean the absence of lives. It means lives well hidden. And that's exactly what you're becoming. A well-hidden life. You spend your evenings packing slowly, mentally, one item at a time. The necklace your aunt gave you at your wedding. A packet of dried fig, a copper ring. Nothing sentimental, nothing traceable. Just tools. The widow watches, says little. One evening, as you're readying your satchel for the 10th time, she finally says, "Don't take guilt with you. It's heavier than grain and feeds nothing." You nod, but some nights when you lie on the straw mat listening to frogs croak by the canal, you wonder if leaving truly means freedom or just another kind of cage. Because what will you be once you leave? A runaway? A ghost? A liar? Or just someone alive? One morning, a knock interrupts breakfast. A man stands at the door, not a guard, but close. A temple attendant with a scroll and a pinched expression. He says your husband has made a petition, claims you've run away, claims he's owed something. You hold your breath as the widow steps forward. "There's no runaway here," she says calmly. "Only a guest, convalescing." The man eyes you, then shrugs. He's paid to deliver messages, not investigate rumors. He leaves, but the air thickens. The danger now has a shape. You knew this would come eventually. He doesn't want you back. Not really. He wants closure, control, proof that he didn't lose you. You escaped. An escape, to a man like that, is a kind of insult. You make the decision that night that you'll leave. For real. For good. There's a caravan heading south in 3 days, bound for Edfu, then further toward Nubia. They need a scribe, or at least someone who can write. The widow arranges it quietly that you'll travel as her niece. A quiet girl with poor eyesight, seeking the dry southern air for her health, that it's absurd. It's perfect, and yet on your last night in the house, you find yourself lingering. You touch the wall where the falcon curtain hangs. You look at the spot where you first wrote your quiet truth on papyrus. You consider burning it. You don't, because maybe someone will find it. Maybe another girl will need it. You sleep lightly, not from fear this time, but from awareness. Your body knows this is a threshold. When dawn comes, you dress in the plainest tunic you own. Pull your hair into a low knot. Paint your eyes like a priest's assistant, clean, precise, modest, and then you step out. The city feels different today. Less like a maze, more like a river you're finally ready to swim. You walk beside the widow. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing left to say. 8T the docks. The caravan leader greets you with a nod. His eyes skim your face without curiosity. You're just another body, another traveler. Perfect. You step onto the boat. The rope is loosed. The oars dip. The Nile catches you like a mother's hand. Behind you, your old life grows smaller. The rooms, the bed, the linen, the bleeding, the pretending, and ahead, unwritten papyrus. Your name, whatever it will become, waiting like a seal yet to be pressed. The breeze rises, and for the first time since your wedding night, you breathe in fully without flinching. The Nile carries you like a rumor, soft, fluid, unnoticed unless someone looks too closely. The boat moves with the gentle rhythm of old wood and worn hands. The caravan leader barely speaks. His crew, 5 men and 2 older women, keep to their tasks, casting only the occasional glance your way. You are, thankfully, forgettable, and in this moment, that's a kind of magic. You sit near the front pretending to nap while actually watching the shoreline. Papyrus plants wave like silent witnesses. Small children splash near fishing nets. You pass farmers hunched over their fields, oxen pulling stubbornly through muddy rows. Each time the boat glides past a village, you hold your breath. But no one calls your name. No one boards. No one stops the water from moving that you're free, or close enough to pretend. It's a strange kind of freedom, though, one that tastes like dry bread and comes with splinters. You're still a woman alone in a man's world, and every kindness feels borrowed. The first night, the caravan stops at a shallow bend in the river. There's a palm grove nearby, and the women build a small fire while the men secure the goods: copper tools, bundles of linen, dried fish sealed in clay jars. You eat quietly, accept a cup of hot barley water, and sleep with one eye open, your satchel tucked beneath your head. That night, you dream not of your husband, but of the linen from your wedding night. White, clean, flat. You watch it flutter over the water and disappear. When you wake, the stars are still overhead and the fire is embers. You sit up and whisper, "Keep going." To yourself, to the river, to the version of you that almost gave up. Historians still argue whether Egyptian women ever truly left their homes behind. Some claim the patriarchy was too strong, the structures too rigid. Others point to temple records and fragments of legal documents that suggest women did leave, sometimes for work, sometimes by choice, sometimes simply because they had to. But stories like yours, they don't end up in scrolls. They survive in murmurs, myths, and the gaps between official lines. The second day, the crew relaxes a little. One of the older women, a sun-darkened trader named Satep, offers you dried figs and asks your name. You give her a false one, Neshi. She nods like she doesn't believe you, but doesn't push. Later, she tells you about her own daughter, married young to a scribe who died of scorpion sting. "She lives with me now," she says, cracking a fig in half. "Spins linen. Sleeps better without a man." It's a quiet statement, but it echoes, "Sleeps better without a man." You chew the fig slowly, thinking of your nights beneath the falcon curtain, breath caught between fear and shame. Sleep feels different now. Not safer, exactly, but less haunted. That night, a breeze blows up from the south, and the boat rocks gently. You lie beneath the stars, arms folded beneath your head, and listen to frogs in the distance. You think about the other girls still inside those rooms, the ones still hoping the cloth stains, still waiting for the right smile, the right moment, the right month. You ache for them, and you envy them just a little for not knowing yet how long the journey is. You wonder what you'll become. There's no clear plan, just a map in your head and the knowledge that forward is better than back. You could settle in a small town, pose as a scribe's assistant, or claim to be a widow and open a thread-dyeing stall. The world doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours. You even begin to imagine a future where you help other women disappear. Become the one they whisper about, the one with the eyes that see everything and the door that's always open after dusk. Fringe roles like that existed. Quietly. There were always women in the margins who helped others escape the page. They weren't priests or queens or record keepers, but they were powerful. And maybe you think that's your path.be why the third day, your body begins to relax in small ways. Your shoulders lower, your breath deepens. You laugh, once quietly, at a joke Satep makes about river spirits and flatulence that you'd forgotten what it felt like to laugh and not flinch after. That night, as you sit beside the water washing your hands, a child from the crew runs up to you and asks, "Were you always alone?" You blink, then smile. "No, but I am now." She nods, seems to understand more than she should. That's the thing about girls. They learn early, and sometimes they remember everything. The wind shifts again on the fourth day, warmer now, like it's blowing straight from the breath of the gods. You squint into the southern horizon and wonder what the desert smells like beyond this next bend. The caravan keeps moving, and you move with it, not as a guest anymore, but as a shadow stitched into the fabric of the group. You carry jars. You count sacks. You learn the rhythm of trade speak, half honest, half coded, and slowly you start to matter. It's a strange sensation after so long. Being useful without being used, you begin to notice things others miss. A loose rope, a crack in the water jug, a scribal error on a trade slip. Satep catches you correcting it and raises an eyebrow. "You read?" she asks. You shrug. "Enough." She says nothing for a long moment, then nods and hands you more slips. Just like that, you're not hiding anymore. You're becoming. The next village welcomes the caravan with dusty bread and laughter. You stay in the boat, veiled. No one questions it. You watch the traders mingle, greet familiar faces, negotiate loudly under the sun. And there, in the chaos, it happens. You see someone who knew you that he doesn't notice you. Not at first. He's talking to another merchant, waving his arms the way he always did at festivals. But you know him, one of your husband's distant cousins, the one who once tried to flirt with you behind a temple pillar. You go still, breath caught midrib. You glance at Satep. She's watching you carefully. Without a word, you drop the scrolls you're holding and step deeper into the boat, behind a stack of baskets. You stay there, kneeling, heartbeat sharp and fast like a struck drum, that he doesn't come closer. Doesn't seem to notice, but the moment rattles you. All the quiet, invisible progress you've made feels like it's cracking underfoot. You don't sleep that night. You sit up, knees pulled close, staring at the moon through the boat's canopy. That cousin, he wasn't dangerous, but he was a thread, and threads pull at everything when yanked. If he saw you, word could travel. Your name could return to places you swore you'd left behind. And then what? Your husband, shamed. Your in-laws, outraged. You drag back, if not physically, then by reputation. Historians still argue about the legal freedom ancient Egyptian women held. Some could own property, file for divorce, even remarry. But those freedoms were not equal across status, nor were they immune to social punishment that a wife who left her husband might win her case in a temple court and still find herself barred from the market, from her family's home, from the life she knew. You understood this when you left. But understanding it and feeling it slam against your ribs like a thrown basket, those are different things. Satep sits beside you before dawn, placing a folded linen bundle on your lap. If you need to disappear further, she says, I know a name to use. Inside is a new tunic, different color, simple, clean, a new identity stitched into the threads. You touch it gently, tears catching at the edge of your breath, but not falling. You're past that stage. I'm tired of running, you say. She nods. Then don't run. Walk boldly. You leave the boat at the next town. The caravan continues without you. No fuss, no questions, just a passing of water and glances. You walk into the town square wearing the new tunic. You call yourself Thene now. N01 blinks. It's the perfect town, small enough to avoid notice, large enough to hold secrets. You find a quiet job helping a reed seller copy his inventory. He's half blind and grateful for the help. You trade work for food. A mat, a corner in the back room. The reed seller's wife watches you carefully, but not unkindly. One evening, she offers you a strip of cloth for your hair. To keep the dust out, she says. You say thank you, but what you mean is Thank you for pretending not to see who I used to be. The days stretch. You learn the town. Learn the rhythms. When the bread bakes, when the gossip flows, when to speak and when to vanish into the background. You pass a woman one morning with a belly round like a drum. She smiles at you with radiant peace. You smile back. But something pulls at your chest. Not grief, not jealousy, just a quiet awareness of how many paths one life might have taken. What would have happened if the cloth had stained that night? If the womb had opened? If the gods had nodded yes instead of silence? Would you be here now? Or would you still be lost, just in a different way? You don't know. And maybe that's the point, that you're not that girl anymore, that you're not a wife. Not a bride, that you're Athene now, not a woman with ink on her fingers, wind in her lungs, and no master to ask permission from. And slowly, your bones begin to believe it. The sun wakes you now, not the call of servants or the creak of a gate outside your husband's house. Just the sun, warm, soft, impersonal. It doesn't care what name you used yesterday. You stretch on your mat in the back of the reed seller's storeroom and feel the aches of a body that finally belongs to itself. The shop is quiet this early. The reed bundles sway slightly in the morning breeze, giving the room a kind of sleepy breath. You take your time. You've earned that now. The old reed seller grunts a greeting when you bring him his water. He doesn't ask where you came from. Never has. He only cares that your numbers are correct and your handwriting is neat. It's more dignity than you've had in months. In ancient Egypt, scribes were considered essential, not just as record keepers, but as interpreters of order, of truth. The word for scribe, sesh, was bound to ideas of wisdom, clarity, even cosmic balance that, of course, they didn't imagine women in that role. Not officially, not publicly, but here you are, copying inventory lists, reading price changes, quietly correcting temple tax records that the officials mess up and send to the reed seller for help. You're not a priestess. You're not royalty. You're not even officially literate by the standards of the city. And still, your hand holds truth point one evening. A customer lingers after a purchase. A well-dressed woman with delicate fingers and eyes that don't miss much. She watches you organize scrolls behind the table. You're not from here, she says. You meet her gaze. Neither are you. She smiles. Fair. Later, Satep told you the most dangerous people were never loud. They didn't carry knives. They carried secrets. And you're learning to recognize them by the tilt of a chin, the pause in a sentence, the way someone doesn't ask the question they want to. The woman introduces herself the next day as TA. No mention of a husband. No clear occupation. Just Ted. You share lunch. Talk about the weather. Eventually, the conversation shifts to work. She says she's involved with some textile women. Dyers, weavers, traders. Not temple-sanctioned, she says with a wink, but more reliable. You don't ask what she means. Not yet. But you start watching more closely when she visits the shop. She brings you news from other towns. Quiet news about marriages ending, girls escaping, women opening bakeries together near the canal road. And sometimes she says things like they needed help getting out. Just paperwork, nothing serious. You nod, because you understand exactly how serious paperwork can be. Historians still argue about whether Egyptian women formed underground networks. Some dismiss the idea, claiming the patriarchy was too entrenched. But others, those who study graffiti, merchant records, temple lists with names crossed out, see the shadows. They see signs of collaboration, of escape routes not carved by gods, but by mortal women with stubborn fingers and sharp minds. Tai isn't just a trader. She's part of something. And now, Soryu.it starts small. A scribbled name corrected. A trade receipt forged to suggest a different departure date. A birth record duplicated for a child who technically belongs to someone else now. At first, your hands shake. But only a little. Then it becomes routine that you're not lying. You're redirecting fate. One afternoon, it brings a girl, maybe 15, too thin, too quiet. You don't ask questions. You just offer her a bowl of dates and set out your writing tools. That night, you give her a new name. A simple one. A safe one. She leaves before sunrise. And you feel lighter. Not because she's gone, but because she didn't have to stay. You wonder how many others are still waiting behind doors, counting bruises, swallowing silence. You wonder how long it will take for your reach to extend beyond this little shop. And you begin to plan, not to escape. To build a place. A network. A whisper chain of women who pass down not recipes or charms, but instructions. Here's how you leave. Here's where you go. Here's who to trust. It won't be fast or easy. But it's better than being a bride waiting for proof of virginity in a room full of silence. Better than praying to gods who look the other way. Better than pretending your body belongs to someone else just because the law says so. The reed seller calls you girl less now. Sometimes he even asks your opinion before finalizing a trade. You take the ledger from his cracked hands. Run your finger down the column. Shake your head once. Wrong unit. You say softly, they cheated you. He grunts. Fix it. And you do. Because your hand, once shaking, now holds the weight of more than INK.IT holds history. The hidden kind. The kind carved quietly between the official lines. Time starts to fold. Days blend into each other like the overlapping reeds you now handle with such familiarity. Your hands, once soft with scented oils and bridal henna, are now rough with ink and work. But you stop thinking about what they used to be, because what they are now is more powerful. You've become a fixture in the reed shop. Not a guest, not a girl in hiding. A person with skills and a place in the rhythm of the town. Children wave at you when you pass. Older women nod, not quite warmly, but with the quiet respect they reserve for those who've survived something that you've changed. And they see it, but change, like the Nile's flood, is both blessing and threat. Te returns after several weeks away. She walks faster now, her cloak wrapped tighter, her voice lower. You know the signs. Something's brewing. There's talk, she says one night, unrolling a scroll under lamplight. A priest's daughter has gone missing. From the north. You don't react. TIAA continues. They're looking south. Always downriver. Always where women go when they want to become invisible. You chew your lip. Do they know names? She shakes her head. Not yet, but they're reading marriage ledgers, cross-checking temple records. They're serious this time. The fire pops in the corner. You lean back and exhale. You know the priesthood has its own justice. It doesn't always involve laws. It involves shame, reputation, ritual re-cleansing. Sometimes exile, sometimes worse. Historians still argue how much autonomy priestesses really had. Some claim they were honored, protected, revered. Others whisper about what happened when they broke rules no man had to follow. You know which version is closer to the truth. So what do you need? You ask quietly. Tay slides a folded piece of linen toward you. It's stained with something that looks like pomegranate juice, but it isn't. A false confirmation of ritual purity, she says. For her return, you stare at it. She's going back? She's being returned today, he says grimly. They caught her near Memphis. She'll be paraded through the temple to prove she's still clean. You swallow. Hard. I thought she ran. She did. You pick up your pen. Not because you agree. Not because you support it. But because sometimes survival means bending the page to stop the bleeding. You write the statement. Ancient formulas. Priest-approved phrases. You mimic the curls of the official scribe's hand so closely it would take the gods themselves to tell the difference. You hand it back, and TIA looks at you like you've just held the world still for a moment. You're not just helping now, she says. You're shaping things. You don't respond, because shaping comes with weight. Later that night, as the town sleeps, you stand by the canal, watching reflections ripple and scatter like dreams. You think of the priest's daughter, dragged back into the temple, probably broken in places no one can see. You wonder what she whispered to herself when they caught her, that I was almost free. You close your eyes and let the night press against you. Not long after, the reed seller falls ill. A coughing sickness that won't let go. You brew him teas, wipe his brow, copy lists for him, fetch fresh oil for the lamp. And when the day comes that he can't open the shop, you do it for him. You roll up the mat, sweep the dust, greet customers with a calm voice and a steady hand. And no one objects. It's as if the town has already decided. Yes, she belongs here now. IT feels like winning. But it's not without its shadows that a traveler arrives one morning, wrapped in a fine linen robe. His voice carries the clipped accent of northern temples. You're behind the counter when he approaches. Is the owner here? He asks. Unwell, you answer. I can help you. He looks you over, eyes catching on your fingers, stained black with ink, marked by long days of writing. You're not from here, he says, not unkindly. No one ever is. You reply, he chuckles, then sets down a scroll. I need copies, discreet ones. You nod. When he leaves, you unroll the scroll. It's a list of names, marriages, movements, temple entries, temple exits, and there, on line 13, your old name. Not Thene, the other one, the name you buried. The paper doesn't shake in your hand. Your breath stays even. But inside, your ribs tighten like a pulled string that it's not proof. Not yet, but it's close. Someone's still looking. Someone with scrolls and stamps and the temple's weight behind them. You burn the list after copying it. Slowly, ash falling like snowfall. You watch your name curl into black dust, and you think they can keep looking till I'm not there anymore. You never were really, because your real self wasn't the bride, or the wife, or the girl in white linen as she's here now, ink-stained, sharp-eyed, rewriting the ending point one girl at a time. You begin to understand that survival is not a single act. It's a sequence, a rhythm, an ink stroke followed by another. A lie followed by a truth wrapped inside another. LIE.IT doesn't end with escape. It begins there. Every day now, the shop becomes more than just a business. It's your front, your refuge, and quietly, it becomes something more. A bridge. Women start arriving not just for reeds or scrolls, but for whispers. Some just linger too long by the counter. Some press notes into your palm like old coins. Others don't say a word but return again and again, eyes sharp, lips silent. You know what they want. Or more precisely, what they need. They need a way out. Some are like you once were, young, newly married, with wrists still red from wedding bangles. Others are older, bruised by years of silence. Some carry children. Some carry secrets. All carry fear. And so you begin. one case at a time. You help one woman forge a travel permit to visit her aunt, which is true, except the aunt doesn't exist. You help another rewrite her marriage record to reflect a divorce that was never approved but deeply necessary. You teach a girl to sign her new name in temple script over and over until her hand stops shaking. You burn the originals. You hide the ashes. Tay visits more often now. You don't even bother with code words anymore. She walks in and you hand her what she needs. Another safe passage, she says one day, holding up a name slip. She said to tell you thank you. She said she hasn't slept that deeply in years. You nod, but your heart clenches a little. Not from pride, from pressure, because each success is a promise. Each woman who gets out means you can't stop now. Historians will never write your name. There will be no monument for the shop girl with the ink-stained hands. But you've stopped needing that. Instead, you build your legacy out of the women who keep living point one afternoon. The reed seller dies. Peacefully, quietly, on his mat with your tea beside him. He says nothing in his final breath, just exhales as though releasing a weight. You wash his body. Wrap it. Notify the temple. You speak kindly to the officials, answer questions. He had no children, no other family. He left no debts. You bury him on the hill where the wind always rises just before sunset. And just like that, the shop becomes yours in a one contest sit. The town barely blinks. You've been running it for months. Who else would take over? You repaint the door, clean the floors, rearrange the scrolls, and for the first time in your life, you own something. Not just a roof and a key, but space. Authority. A presence that you've remade yourself so many times now you've lost count. Wife. Runaway. Scribe. Shadow. But this version, this quiet, ink-fingered shopkeeper with a tongue that knows just when to stay silent, she feels permanent. Maybe not forever, but long enough to matter. Point one morning, you wake to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, not market traffic, not casual. You move quietly to the door and lift the curtain an inch. Point two men. Temple garb, northern accents, looking, asking, not for you precisely, but for women like you. You don't panic. You've practiced this moment 100 times in your mind. You leave the scroll room locked. You keep your face calm. When they enter, you hand them a basic inventory list and offer water. They ask questions. You answer just enough and oh, you haven't heard of any missing women, and oh, you don't get many travelers here. Yes, you've heard rumors. Who hasn't? One of them glances at your hands. You write. You nod. Shopper records. Nothing's sacred. He grunts. They leave after 10 minutes. But it's enough. You know now, they're still reaching. Still searching. And so you adjust. Again, you bury certain scrolls beneath the floorboards. You move meetings to nightfall. You give your women code names. Firefly, Myrrh, White Boat. The work doesn't slow. In fact, it spreads. You hear whispers from other towns, other shops, other scribes. The same system forming like a spider's web, delicate, invisible, stronger than it looks. Some call a myth. Others call it the women's net. Historians still argue if it ever existed, but you know, because you're one of its knots, and through you, the whole thing holds. The reed shop changes shape, though no one outside seems to notice. Tio the town. It's the same quiet stall by the canal. Bundles of papyrus drying on the walls, a scent of ink and damp reeds drifting lazily through the morning air. But inside, it's become something else entirely. It's a shelter, a switchboard, a sanctuary. Your days begin with scroll work and simple trades. Midday arrives or one of the others. And when the shadows lengthen, the real work begins. The women arrive singly, in pairs. Some with swollen eyes, some holding children close, some walking with the odd stiffness that speaks of bruises under their robes. You never ask how they found you. They just do. They come because the rumor is stronger than fear now. The rumor that there's a woman who knows the system, who can rewrite it, even if just for one person, one day, one step out of the cage. You listen, you write, you burn what needs burning. The little back room becomes a writing den and a sanctuary rolled into one. You keep it stocked with dry dates, soft cloth, and spare slippers for travel. One girl asks you if you're a priestess. You laugh softly. No, love. Just someone who knows how to use a pen. But deep down, you feel a kind of worship in the work, not worship of gods, but of survival, of resistance, of quiet, deliberate power. You write ritual certificates, falsified dowry records, rewrite temple schedules to give someone a day's head start. You have a knack now for mimicking a dozen different hands. Once, you even forged a marriage annulment sign by the hand of Thoth himself. The man who received it never dared to question it. Historians often describe ancient Egyptian women as having more rights than their counterparts in other ancient cultures. It's true, to a point. They could own land, testify in court, initiate divorce. But in practice, those rights existed only as long as men allowed them to. What you do now isn't rebellion. It's restoration, giving back what should have always been theirs. One night, a girl barely 13 slips into the shop, barefoot, breathless. She doesn't speak. She just holds out her wrist, then a marriage bracelet. Still gleaming, still fresh. You take it gently from her. Press your thumb to the metal. Then crush it beneath a hammer. Slowly, deliberately. The sound is quiet, but final. She exhales, and you give her a name she's never heard before and tell her to memorize it like a prayer. She leaves by dawn. The risk grows. You know this that a temple scribe comes through town asking about records lost or incomplete. He browses your scrolls with too much interest. You smile, offer him lemon water, and hand him a bundle of perfectly boring shipping logs. He leaves with nothing useful. But you start sleeping with your satchel packed again, just in case that you're not naive. You know one day someone may come asking the right questions. But until then, you keep your read sharp and your story straight. You take fewer walks now. Keep to the shadows. Let the shop speak for you. Some days you look out at the street and wonder how many girls are still waiting, still hoping for someone to open a door. And you think, if no one else will do it, I will. That if no one else will rewrite the story, I'll write a new one entirely. Today brings you word from the Delta, another group forming near Sais, using papyrus dyeing as cover. She smiles when she says it. It's spreading, she whispers. You sit in silence a moment, then nod. Yes, you say. It should. One woman at a time, one page at a time, one line made true. There are no temples for your kind. But if there were, they'd be built from all the names you've helped erase or the ones you've helped invent. And inside them, there'd be no altars, only fire pits, inkstones, and the quiet hum of a woman pressing her name into history with a steady hand. You're no longer surprised by how ordinary the extraordinary looks. Freedom doesn't come with trumpets or celestial light. It arrives in the quiet footsteps of a girl walking away from a house she once called home. It appears in the smudge of ink on a fake travel order. It lives in the way your hands move, fast, precise, invisible, as you write someone out of the life that tried to consume her. Today, it comes in the form of a pregnant woman named Nanid. She's in her 30s, tall, with strong arms and a scar near her collarbone. She doesn't flinch when you open the door. She doesn't cry. She just sits, and then she tells you everything. My husband died last month, she begins. But before that, he wrote a letter claiming I was mad. You pause, while hovering midair. Mad? She nods. He wanted to keep the house, the fields. Said if I was mentally unfit, the council would grant him control. He got 2 temple men to back him. Paid them, I think. Your stomach turns, false madness claims, an old trick. Easier than divorce. More damning. Harder to disprove. And now, with him dead, the council still holds the deed. They say I can inherit, Nanny adds. They say it belongs to his brother now. She rubs her belly absently. My son will never know his own name unless I fix this. You don't hesitate. The next 2 days are a blur of ink and fire. You forged 2 statements from the deceased, written just weeks before his death, full of remorse. You mimic the signature of one of the temple men, adding just enough age to the ink to pass. And then a final document from a traveling physician confirming that Nanny was never ill, only exhausted, and now well. You hand it all to her with the calm gravity of a priest handing over a sacred relic. She takes it wordlessly. Her eyes fill, but no tears fall. Just steel. Will it work? She asks. You don't lie. It might. And if it doesn't, I'll find another way. Historians still debate how widespread false claims like Nanny's were. Some argue they were rare exceptions. Others suspect they were common tools in the legal chessboard of property and patriarchy, and what's harder to trace are the women like you. Those who found a way to bend the system back toward justice. There's a particular weight in that role. Not just writing for others, but rewriting the record itself. Because what is history if not a story someone decided to keep? And you've decided which stories deserve to remain. Later that week, Tee returns. This time she brings 2 women from Nubia. Their accents are unfamiliar, their eyes alert. They speak little, but watch everything. You don't need words. You hand them warm tea, set out clean papyrus, and begin to draw up their aliases. And as you do, you notice something strange. Your hand doesn't shake anymore that IT used to. In the beginning, with every forged seal, every false name, the fear used to drip from your ribs like sweat. But now, it's just routine, a rhythm, a ritual. You realize you've become your own kind of priestess, not of gods, but of second chances that in the weeks that follow. More women come. Some you never even see, just folded slips left at your door, requests coded in old trader shorthand. Point one of them says simply, "Is there room for a child?" You fold the slip 3 times, then open a corner in the storage room. Lay out blankets. Set aside a satchel, just in case, because the work has grown now. It's no longer just documents. It's logistics, bedding, disguises, backstories, safe words. You run a full operation, and most of the town still thinks you're just a quiet reed merchant. And maybe you are, but maybe you're also the reason someone's daughter comes home with both her body and her soul intact. Point one evening. After the last client leaves, you sit with Tee in the doorway, watching the sun drop like a coin behind the riverbank. You ever wonder if they'll catch us? She asks. You sip your barley drink. All the time. What would you do? You smile. Disappear again. Maybe farther this time. Maybe south of Elephantine. She grins. There's always farther. You both fall silent, letting the breeze move through the space between words. Then Tee says something you weren't expecting. There are whispers of a woman like you in Heliopolis now. Ink-stained, quiet, discreet. You glance over. Not me. She shrugs. Maybe not. But maybe what you started has grown feet. And suddenly your chest aches. Not from fear, but from something bigger. Hope. Because you always feared this would end with you. But maybe it won't. Maybe it never was about you at all. Maybe this ink, this risk, this quiet rebellion was always meant to move beyond your hands like the Nile. Always forward, always south. The shop feels different now, and not just to you. There's a stillness in it that hums, like an instrument tuned just before a song begins. By day, it remains the same. Scrolls stacked neatly, papyrus bundles airing on the rafters, the occasional customer drifting in to ask for help with taxes or supply lists. But under the surface, it's humming with something else. Movement. Point one night, a woman arrives without warning. She doesn't knock. She doesn't speak. She just appears in the doorway, holding the hand of a boy who looks no older than 6 that you pause mid-inking a ledger. Her hair is wrapped tightly, her cloak muddied and torn. She meets your eyes, and in them, you see a familiar kind of hollow, the look of someone who's been running too long. You don't ask for names. You simply say, "There's water. Come in." She drinks. The boy falls asleep in the corner within minutes, as if he'd been holding out for this moment. Only after her second cup does she speak. "My husband sold my son's future to his cousin." She doesn't need to explain more. You've heard this story before. Different names, different shapes. Sometimes it's a child, sometimes a plot of land, sometimes a girl's body traded, as if it were grain. But always, it ends the same: a woman standing on your doorstep, trying not to collapse. You set aside the ledger. You don't just forge documents anymore. You make escape plans. You listen. You ask quiet questions. You assess what she'll need: clothing, aliases, routes in the candlelight. You draw a new name for her. Then another for the boy. This one, you say, handing her the papyrus, means he walks freely. She presses it to her chest as if it's a holy text. Historians still argue whether Egyptian women ever truly had control over their children after separation or divorce. Officially, the mother had custody until the child reached a certain age. But unofficially, control could be bought, stolen, traded in a back room, or erased with a forged record. You know this better than most. And you know how fragile motherhood is when the ink dries in someone else's hand. The next morning, you guide her to a trader's caravan headed east. You whisper a phrase to the driver, a phrase you and Tia have used for months now. It signals safe passage. No questions. The woman bows low before leaving. "How can I ever repay you?" You smile. You don't. You survive. That's the only repayment I ask. You watch her vanish into the sunlit road, the boy's hand gripping hers tightly, as if even in sleep he knows what she's done to protect him. You return to the shop and find the papyrus still warm on your work table. You press your fingers to the spot where her name was written and breathe out slowly. There's a rhythm to this work, a sacred beat, but even sacred things wear on you. That evening, as you close the shutters, you feel it in your bones. The exhaustion, the thin veil of fear always behind your eyes, and the loneliness. Not the kind of being unloved. No, this town has accepted you. You're needed, valued. But the loneliness of being the one who holds the pen, the gate, the fire, and no one sees how your hands tremble after every false seal. No one sees how often you lie awake, wondering if today is the day someone tears the curtain aside. Even as much as she helps, is part of the movement now. Always traveling, always connecting new outposts. You stay behind like the anchor, and sometimes anchors rust. You sit that night in your back room, sipping date wine, staring at the old curtain you once carried out of your husband's house, the wedding one with the falcon embroidered on it. You never burn it. You keep it folded in a basket beneath your inkstones, a reminder of what you left, of what you survived, of how far you've come, and maybe one day of what you might still need to leave behind. Because the work is growing. The net of women, those helping, those running, those rebuilding, has begun to pull across more than just a few towns. They say now there's a healer near Abydos, riding herbs into freedom, a baker in Edfu who hides letters in her loaves, a seamstress near the Redlands who stitches codes into shawls. It's happening. What started as your escape has become a wave. And waves never return to where they began. You pour a little wine onto the floor for the girl you used to be. Then you roll out fresh papyrus, because there will be another name tomorrow, another mother, another girl, another false madness, another flame to carry across the dark. And you'll still be here, with ink on your fingers and fire in your heart. Dawn creeps in on a windless morning, pale and pink, slipping through the reed shutters like a whispered secret. You rise early, before the first footfall in the market, before the spice vendor grunts open his stall. You've come to crave this time, The hour when the world forgets to demand things from you. The shop is still. Dust motes hang in the air like tiny drifting boats, and the ink in the pot glistens, untouched, like it's waiting for you. Today is different. You can feel IT isn't danger. Not quite. But a shift. A heaviness in the air. The way the reeds rustle without wind. The way your quill rests too lightly in your hand. There's a visitor outside. You know it before you see them. The pause of breath. The distant scrape of sandals not moving away. You open the door, that it's a man. Middle-aged. Temple robes, sun-bleached and heavy. Not northern. He's local. But serious. He bows. Polite, but not submissive. You are the scribe, he says. You nod. I need help with a matter of inheritance, he says, stepping into the shop. His eyes sweep the room, lingering on the scroll racks. The ink table. The curtain to the back room. You keep your voice calm. I assist with that often. He hands you a bundle of documents. Old, cracked at the edges. Official stamps. You glance at the names and freeze. Point one of them is yours. Your first name. Your former name. The bride who disappeared, but it's buried. Listed as a witness to a transaction years ago. Meaningless now, unless someone is digging with intent. You don't flinch. You flip through the papers with studied boredom. This was a merchant's ledger, you say, pointing to the faint remnants of a wax seal. The inheritance won't hold unless the witnesses were temple-sanctioned. The man frowns. So it's invalid? You nod. Technically. He exhales, folds the bundle again. Thank you, he says. These old documents, they always cause more questions than answers. You nod again, but your pulse is tapping wildly under your ribs that he leaves with a polite farewell, sandals scuffing softly as he rounds the corner. And you sit, still, staring at the scroll. Someone is pulling threads. Threads you thought had disintegrated, and they're pulling carefully. Not to accuse, not yet, but to confirm. You light the burner. Drop the document into the flame. Watch the old version of your name curl and blacken into ash. Later that day, TIA arrives. You don't even greet her. You simply say, "They're looking again." Her jaw tightens. How close? Close enough to know my handwriting. She doesn't hesitate. We move. Together. But you shake your head. Not yet. Why not? Because I'm not done. And you're not that you've helped dozens. Women. Girls. Mothers. Even the occasional brother, slipping his sister out under the cover of a forged grain shipment. You've changed records, sealed new lives, written yourself out of your own story and into 100 others. But there are still so many who don't know this kind of freedom exists, and you refuse to vanish before you pass the torch to you make a plan. That night, you write 3 new sets of instructions. One for TIAA, one for the baker in Edfu, one for a girl named Satira who's been apprenticing with you for months. Satira is barely 20, born in town, too clever for her own good, and she has a handwriting that already mirrors yours. You call her into the shop. I may need to disappear, you say softly. You take over. Her eyes widen. Me? You've been learning everything, you say. Now it's your turn. You hand her a ledger with false names, code words, safe trade routes marked in invisible ink. You explain the fire drawer, the hidden papyrus rolls, the die combinations for signaling danger. She listens like someone being handed not just a task, but a destiny. And maybe she is. Historians might never uncover these passing moments. The flick of power from one woman's hand to another's. The relay of resistance. But you know, and now Satira does too. That night, you sleep lightly. You pack a satchel just in case. You keep a small pouch of coin by the door. You sit by the window and watch the stars. That it's quiet now. The shop still stands, but you don't cling to it anymore because this was never about a place. That IT was about an idea. A name that cannot be bound to one face, one voice, one life. So if they come tomorrow, if your name is called in a voice that demands punishment, then so be it that you'll be gone, And the name will live on scrolls, and in whispers, and in the steady hands of women who now know exactly what to do. You don't know if it's courage or exhaustion that keeps you calm the next morning. The street bustles with the usual noise. Traders bartering, children running barefoot, a dog barking at a goose like it owes him money. But underneath it all, there's a silence you recognize, the kind of silence that says someone's watching. You keep the shop open. You brew your ink. Set out scrolls. Talk to 3 customers. Smile. And then, just before noon, they arrive. 2 temple scribes. 1 military officer. Not in a rush. That's the worst part. They move slowly, confidently, like they already know what they're going to find. You greet them as you always do. They ask your name. You give them the one you've worn for years now. They ask to see your records. You offer a modest sample, mostly shipping logs, civic scrolls, harmless contracts. But you know that's not what they want. 1 of them, the younger scribe, tilts his head as he looks at your handwriting. You were trained in the North? He asks. You keep your voice even. A little. My uncle traded in Heliopolis. I picked up some habits. He nods. Your hand's unusually clean. Precise. Like temple work. You shrug. Just practice. They linger another half hour. Ask polite questions with sharp edges. They're waiting for you to crack. For something to give, but nothing does. You know the shop is clean. The real work has already moved. Distributed to women you trust, scattered through coated loaves and re-dyed linens and songs that sound like lullabies but tell a girl how to slip out of her home at night. They won't find what they're looking for, because what they're looking for isn't a crime. It's a pattern, a movement, a wave. And waves don't live in scrolls. They live in people. Eventually, the officers thank you and leave. You don't relax. Not yet. Instead, you close the shop early and walk to the river. There, beneath a tree, you find Satira waiting. She always knows when to appear without being asked. You sit beside her. Neither of you speaks at first. The wind plays with the edge of your cloak, and the water laps gently at the sand. Then she turns to you. They asked my neighbor about you, she says. Pretended it was just small talk. Asked when you arrived, how long you'd been here. You nod. They'll come back, she adds. I know. Silence again. Then she says, I'm ready. And you realize this is the moment. You didn't choose this life for glory. But here it is, your legacy, sitting beside you with dirt under her nails and a fire behind her eyes. You reach into your satchel. Hand her the final package. Inside, forged temple permissions, new ink seals, and a map of the safest water routes east toward the Red Sea. This will get 5 women and 3 children out of Akhmim. You whisper. It's your turn to walk it through. She cradles it like it's a child. You feel both hollow and whole, because letting go of the mission hurts. But knowing it continues without you, that is freedom. You walk home slowly that evening, past the same doorways you once feared, past the temple wall you used to avoid. You realize something that stops you in your tracks. You're not scared anymore. Not of being caught. Not of disappearing. Not even of what comes next, that you've become too many things to be erased. Somewhere in the South, a girl will read a scroll you wrote, that I in the West. A mother will sign a new name for her child because of your forged INK, I in the Delta. Someone will whisper your alias as a prayer. Historians may never know that they'll write about kings, about wars, about gods. They won't mention the women who smuggled freedom beneath the scent of ink and myrrh. But freedom doesn't need a monument. IT only needs movement. And movement, once started, doesn't stop. That night, you place one final slip beneath a loose reed tile in your back room. That if someone finds it, years from now, they'll read this. If you're reading this, you're not alone. Others came before you. Others will come after. Keep going. You fold it. Press it flat. Close the floorboard. And you sleep. Not as the woman who ran from a wedding night. Not as the girl with the name they try to burn. But as the scribe who rewrote the ending. Morning, you rise slowly, not from dread but from habit. The shop creaks with familiar sounds. Dust settling, clay jars expanding with heat, the soft shuffle of reed bundles against the back wall. But you know, today is your last day here. There's no rush. No soldiers banging down the door. No torches or shouts. But the signs are unmistakable. Satira saw a northern scribe speaking to the district head. T.A. has sent a coded message hidden in a shipment of lotus root. Time to float. The river bends. You've done all you can. This part of the story is over. And now, you prepare for the quietest exit of your life. You clean the inkstone. Pack the last of your scrolls. Not the forgeries. Not the letters of escape, but the teachings. The patterns. The methods. For whoever finds them. You fold your robes carefully, disguising the worn fabric with a traveler's patchwork wrap. You take down the old falcon-embroidered curtain, fold it one final time, and tuck it away, not as baggage, but as evidence. I was here, and I began again. You lock the front door, slide the key under the mat. You don't need it anymore, because by sunset, someone else will walk past this quiet shop and find a closed door with no note, no explanation. But within a week, Satira will open it, and she'll make the place her own. You slip down a side street. Sandals soft against the packed clay. You pass the spice merchant, the fruit woman, the lazy stray cat that always sleeps by the canal steps. You pass them all, and no one stops you. Not because they don't recognize you, but because they know better, because they respect you, because whatever rumors floated through this town about the woman with ink-stained hands, they all ended the same way. She helped people. And in Egypt, that's a story more sacred than most spells. You board the boat just after dusk. One of TIAA's trusted contacts. An older man with clouded eyes, but steady hands. He doesn't ask your name. He just says, north or south? You smile. Farther. He grins, toothless. Farther's a good place to go. The boat rocks gently as it pulls from the dock. You watch the town shrink. The reed shop vanishing behind the curve of the canal. You don't cry. You don't even ache, because this isn't an ending. You left the ending behind years ago when you ran from the temple, from the bride price, from the fear. This is a continuation, that a ripple in a river that doesn't know how to stop. Historians won't know you're still moving, but the women they'll tell each other stories in code. They'll pass on names that were never real, but always mattered. Names like yours. And somewhere, in another dusty village, you'll open another shop, or a wash house, or a weaving stall, and you'll do it again, quietly, carefully, brilliantly, because what began as fear on a wedding night has become something unbreakable, not defiance, not rebellion, restoration. Restoration of a woman's right to choose.t, leave.t, name herself. And you become the priestess of that movement. Not in temples, not in scripture, but in lives rewritten one ink line at a time. And if one day the scrolls are unearthed and someone sees the marks, the seals, the patterns, they might wonder, who did this? Who helped all these women disappear into new lives? The answer will float on the river breeze. No name. Just a whisper. She knew what the ink was really for. Word count, 1,096, wind down, 300 words, and now you're drifting again, downriver, upriver, maybe nowhere at all. The current is slow, the night warm. You hear the soft creak of oars dipping in time, the gentle splash of water against wood, like the heartbeat of the Nile itself. Your eyes grow heavier, in the distance. Frogs chirp like little priests, and the reeds shiver with sleepy gossip. The stars above don't shine. They glow, faint and kind, like eyes that promise you're not alone. You lie back, the linen of your wrap cool against your cheek. You can almost smell the ink, faint but comforting, like an old memory that still lingers sweet. Somewhere behind you, the shop is quiet. Maybe someone has already stopped at its door. Maybe Satira is lighting the lamp. Maybe she's writing her first name for someone who cannot speak their own. You smile. Not wide, just enough. You know now. Every ending is just someone else's beginning. You were never just a girl running away. You are a new mythology forming between lines. And in this gentle, dark float downriver, you're at peace. Nothing left to run from in O temple guards and O wedding songs. Only the sound of oars, reeds, and breath. So take this moment. Let the hum of ancient waters lull you. Let your shoulders fall. Let your hands unclench. You've done enough. You are safe. You are free. You are already forgotten in the way all the best legends are. Sleep now, inscribed. Tomorrow belongs to someone you helped save. End of script. Sweet dreams.